Do you really think fundraising is going to be easy for your startup? Hate to break it to you, but if you're trying to raise money now when you need the money, you're in for a long road ahead. In this episode, I'm going to demystify the timeline of fundraising and make sure you set yourself up for success. The strategy I will share is for founders at any stage of their business raising equity from professional investors within the next 12 months. If this is your first time tuning in to Fundraising Demystified, I'm Jason Kirby. I've been building and selling companies for 17 years. I've raised over $145 million, 4 exits, and now I help founder-led companies access the right capital from the right partners at my firm, Thunder.vc. Stay tuned for a freebie on how you can access a free list of AI-recommended investors specific to your startup. Now, let's get back to managing your fundraising timeline. As you know, or as you probably have heard, fundraising is a marathon, not a sprint. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down the exact steps you need to build investor relationships, keep your company growing up and to the right, and get the right investors at your cap table. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about month 0. Okay, I'm calling it 0 because I'm assuming maybe you haven't done this step yet, and it's never too late to start. The best time to start is now if you haven't done it already. So we're going to start with fundraising before you need the money. So too many founders wait until they're desperate to ask for money, and ultimately what ends up happening is you go out when you need money in 3 months, you try to build all these relationships, and maybe you get a couple angels, but ultimately you won't raise the money that you actually need, and you don't get the money to hit the velocity that you need to raise the next round. So I always like to bring up this point, and most people don't know this, but did you know that the average VC founder relationship lasts longer than the average American marriage? Okay. How many successful marriages started off with a cold email and ended with a ring on a finger in less than 90 days? I'm going to go with probably 0 or a negligible amount. And it's so important for founders to change their perspective about fundraising. You think you got to be in a cave, locked in your basement, your garage, wherever, and just build, and then show up one day and, here's Jason, who no one in the world has ever heard of, and he's knocking on your door asking for money. It's like, pump the brakes there. I don't know you. I need to build a relationship with you. I need to trust you. You need to demonstrate that you have the ability to build a real business. Let's, take it easy, take it slow. And that's what's this month 0 is all about. It's about building and establishing these key relationships as early as possible. First thing you need to do, you need to identify and reach out to smart, relevant, and very credible people that are highly regarded in their industry or sector that you're either building in or have built in. They do not have to be investors. They just have to be credible experts that have strong networks. So this is the most important phase of this whole strategy. You need people early on to believe and trust in you. And make sure you don't ask for money. You ask for advice. What ultimately ends up happening is you share what you're building. You don't tell them what they're doing. You share. You make it a collaborative experience. You talk about, hey, I'm thinking about doing X. And because you're coming at it from an open-minded perspective, they're not judging you. They're collaborating with you. They're going back and forth with you, sharing ideas. And you want to demonstrate like, okay, I'm thinking about the business this way. I think my ideal customer profile will be this. I think my go-to-market strategy will be this. I think the market is this big. What are your thoughts? What am I missing? What could I do better? What could be a better value proposition? This way you get these people leaning in with you. They feel like they're contributing and have either at least their identity wrapped up in the business because they contributed maybe something crucial that you end up building, or they feel like they like you more, they're able to build a relationship with you more. So this is really important in the early stages of these relationships. And it also demonstrates that you're coachable. This is one of the most important attributes, especially a first-time founder that doesn't have the ego of a multi-exited founder. It's important to really be coachable. And also one other really key point that I do not want to miss for month 0, meet these people in person. Grab a coffee, go meet at the office. Make sure you actually establish an in real life relationship. Because if you don't, I get this question all the time when I make intros to investors for my friends, my investments, my clients. I get people come up to me and they're like, oh, cool. You know Bob? Like, Bob sounds cool. They're like, oh, you work with Jessica? Okay. Like, well, do you know them? Like, have you met them in person? Like, what do they sound like? How do they hold up themselves? Like, how do they present themselves? Like, those are questions I get. And if I haven't met that person in person and I say, oh, well, we've met a couple times on Zoom or Google Meet, the quality of that intro drops dramatically. They still take the intro seriously. They'll still take the meeting, but it comes with a little less, juice behind it. And that's why it's important to prioritize those in-person meetings. All right. The goal for this month 0 and however long it ends up taking, you need at least 10 of these people in your camp to make sure you're going to have a big enough network to get enough intros to the right investors to actually secure the capital you need down the road. All right, so let's move on to months 1 through 6. So you can be doing month 0 tasks all through month 1 through 6 as well, but ultimately you need to be building rapport with these relationships. You need to be providing updates on a regular basis. If you're doing a 12-month raise and you need to close the end of 12 months, you need to provide monthly updates. If it's further out, then quarterly updates are fine. But ultimately, you need to be demonstrating the good, the bad, the ugly with the business so that people are aware of what you're doing. Maybe they have an opportunity to contribute and ask for advice or help. But ultimately, if you miss out on doing the updates, you fade away. All that work you put into month 0, all those relationships start fading. People start forgetting who you are. So it's super important to maintain those relationships. I've made this mistake before with other businesses. It definitely comes back to bite me if I'm not providing updates. It feels like, I'm using them, and that's ultimately what can kill a relationship. They love seeing the progress. They love seeing the updates. So make sure you prioritize this while you're building a great company, while you're doing everything else right in the operations. You need to be at least prioritizing a few hours a month. Just keep investors updated. Try to get those in-person meetings if you haven't got them already, and have those frequent, touch points. All right, now month 6. This is where the game starts. Okay, you have established some relationships, you've nurtured them a little bit. Now everyone's kind of like, leaning in on, okay, what do you got? Are you gonna actually raise money? What's gonna be a raise? So this is where you need to get everything buttoned up. And here's the checklist that you need. Number 1, you need a deck. But don't build the deck in a silo. Collaborate with your network. Bring in experts. Talk to people. Don't ship out your deck as if it's a final product. Ship it out and say, hey, this is our first draft. What do you think? Well, what questions do you have with this deck? Make it a collaborative process. Again, get their buy-in by allowing them to share their expertise. So important to continue to build those relationships. And if you're unsure on what to do with your deck, or you haven't built a really strong deck or a deck that's appropriate for your stage, don't worry, reach out to our team at help@thunder.vc. Let us know what you're working on, and we'll see if we'll be able to help you with the deck. We love putting together great decks. All right. Deck aside, you at least got a deck going for you now. Now you need to architect a growth trajectory that you can sustain for the next 6 months. This is really important. And make sure you have enough cash on hand to juice paid marketing in case you might fall in the growth. If you don't have consecutive, consistent growth for the next 6 months, you might have to actually start over in your fundraise. And the reason why is once there's like this, and then a drop, investors immediately get turned off. Like, oh, well, when you figure out that, come back to us. It's just the easiest thing to say no to. It's like, oh, you haven't figured it out yet. You're not de-risked enough yet. Maybe some investors, again, you have these great relationships, great intros. They can look past those things, but if you can continuously drive growth over the next 6 months, please do. And I also say is like, keep a little bit of cash on hand. It's better to have a slow and steady growth or stable growth than it is to have like a big, peak, run out of money, and then have a drop. So manage your cash flow accordingly so you can keep that consecutive growth. You need 3 months of growth before you can actually start the fundraise, and then you need to maintain the growth through the diligence and the fundraise process until you actually have cash in bank. So that's why I give this advice on 6 months. Quick plug for founders looking for an edge raising capital. Companies on Thunder.vc have gone on to raise over $1 billion since joining our network. It's absolutely free. Just go to join.thunder.vc to get started. And if you leave a comment on this video down below with your company's name and the problem you're trying to solve, you'll be entered to win a free coaching session with me. Okay, that's it. Just comment down below. Now let's get back to the show. All right. So now you got your growth plan, you got your deck together. Now it's time to go to your network and say, we are ready. You need to tap your network for those warm intros. You need to be very clear and specific with who you want those intros to. So do your research on which investors you ultimately want on your cap table. If you want help creating this list of a hyper-targeted investor pool, then I suggest you go to our website, thunder.vc, go to create a profile or apply now and create a free profile. And we take all the guesswork out of finding out who you should be building relationships with and who you should be raising money from. With our AI tool, we score your company against 6,000 investor profiles to find which have a higher probability of investing in your company. So once you have a list that identify your target investors, share that with your network and identify who can map the intro to who. And this could take some time. This is not meant to be easy. It is tedious. It is manual. There's not a tool out there that can make this perfect. So do the hard work, figure out who connects who to who, and then be very specific with the ask. Send a pre-drafted email that they can just forward to the person you want the intro to so that they can tee it all up as seamlessly as possible and on your timeline. And do not give up until everyone has brought you in warm intros. This happens. You have to be persistent. Just people get lazy, people go on vacation, people forget. And it's not because they don't like you. It's just because they get busy and it's not their highest priority. But if you make it their highest priority by reminding them, it will get done eventually. And that's going, again, back to month zero, all those relationships you built. Now's the time to cash in. All right. So how do you map out your calls? So when you start getting intros, we're going to call this the getting to know you calls, the first call. So I have a whole separate video on how to manage your first call with an investor. But ultimately, you want to demonstrate on this call that you're working on something cool and relevant that investors would be interested in. Okay. So you're not trying to ask for money. You're not trying to, give them the hard pitch. You just want to demonstrate that you're a trusted, credible person working on something interesting, relevant to their investment thesis. Tell them that you plan to raise in the coming months and you wanted to get on their radar early and ask if they would like to be a part of your investor update list. Okay. So you're not going over the hard ask at this point. You're just demonstrating you're, working on something unique and worthy of their time. And you're basically trying to do this whole meeting to earn the right to get them on your investor update list and to earn a meeting when you're actually fundraising. Okay. So what you'll do on that call is you'll basically say, hey, I'm going to be in San Francisco, New York, wherever they are on these dates. Can we go ahead and get something scheduled? And you want it far out in advance. So if you're in month 7, you want to plan for month 9. So 2 months out. So it's pretty easy to get something on the schedule. And you say, hey, I'll be in town that week. Would love to grab coffee or, meet at your office. This is the right way to build the right relationships. This gives plenty of time to lead up to things. You can share information over the next month or two with them, stay in touch. And then you get that crucial in-person meeting, which increases the odds of success dramatically. Okay. And be sure to have at least that 1 week window open already planned. Either book your tickets already, so it's you're going, or at least create the wiggle room and set some dates on where you'll be in which cities so you can coordinate call or in-person meetings as best you can. And try not to ever leave an investor call without getting a clear next step, which is either getting that next meeting booked or asking if they want to be on the investor updates. And if they're hesitant or they say, well, we'll get back to you, that kind of stuff, they're not interested in you, you should completely deprioritize them and move on to someone else. Maybe add them to your investor update list, but don't make them a priority. All right. So that is pretty much month 7 through 8. Now we're on to month 9. So to recap, you have all these amazing advisors or relationships that have teed up all these warm intros. You've now had these introductory calls, maybe 1 or 2 at this point with all these relevant investors. Now it's time to put the pedal to the metal and run a very efficient process over the next 30 days. So this is where you should have all those in-person meetings already pre-scheduled, ready to go in your calendar. You need to reconfirm those meetings, make sure those are, that you tell them, I will be at your office at this time. Put the pressure on them. If you can't do in person, you're doing Google Meets, so be it. This is still appropriate to take first-time calls. You might as well get them in if you get them now. Take every shot you can. But ultimately, the target here that will likely lead to success is 30 meetings with 30 firms. Okay, so that's pretty much the number after doing hundreds of interviews with founders and being a part of so many different raises. 30 is kind of that magic number where it's not too much, not too little. But if you have 30 meetings, you usually have enough momentum to get a couple term sheets. So that's your goal. So if you take anything away from this, find a path to get 30 relevant meetings with investors. So in month 9, you took that blitz of meetings. Hopefully you had at least 30 really good quality meetings with 30 firms. So getting into month 10, you should now be completing light due diligence. So you have like a light data room, which we have a whole data room strategy on our website. You can find out if you go to join.thunder.vc, and you should start be able to collect term sheets. So if you have 30 meetings, odds are you get 1 to 3 term sheets in month 10. Okay. And to learn more about negotiating term sheet, what comes in them, how to prepare for them, if this is your first time, we have a free comprehensive guide that's linked in the description below. Or you can just subscribe to our newsletter at join.thunder.vc. We'll make sure we send that to you. Okay. So month 11 through 12 is getting through a grueling due diligence process. This is often, if you're early stage, it's not too bad, but if it's, later stage, it's just a lot of legal, lawyers talking back and forth. Everyone trying to figure out, come down to the final terms. But ultimately, it should be, the end, signing the docs and collecting wires. And that is typically how it flows. All the heavy work is building those relationships early on to make sure you get enough, shots on goal with, at least those 30 investors. And that often leads to a successful outcome. That doesn't mean reach out to 30 investors. You often probably reach out to 100 or 200 investors, depending on how you run your process, to get those 30 meetings. But ultimately, it's getting 30 meetings that ultimately leads to success. So I promise you, if you follow these steps I shared with you for a 12-month fundraise process, and you're building a company worth equity capital, so let me be clear, not every company is worth raising equity capital for. Not all companies are created equal. So assuming you are worthy of raising equity, this will work. I guarantee it. And if it doesn't, just email me. Tell me your story, and I'll give you my office address to show up one day, slap me in the face, and blame all your fundraising problems on me. But I know that will never happen, because if you follow these steps to a T, you build these key relationships, make clear, relevant asks to get warm intros, you demonstrate that you can run a process, and you get at least those 30 meetings, you will have success. So that all said, I hope you found this session valuable. Again, you can learn more at thunder.vc. You can subscribe to our weekly newsletter and weekly podcast at join.thunder.vc. And if you haven't already liked and subscribed, be sure to do so. Hit that subscribe button, give us a like. And if you have any questions, or you feel if I missed the mark on something, or whatever I said was, impossible to do, give me a comment down below, and I'll be happy to answer you. Until the next episode, be sure to watch our past episodes with amazing founders and VCs that have gone on to raise hundreds of millions of dollars, billion-dollar exits, in our podcast series, Fundraising Demystified.